Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's city council meeting. May you please rise and join me in the flag salute. The right hand over your heart, ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, City Clerk. May you please call the roll?
Yes, Mayor Ibarra,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez,
Present.
Councilmember Larios,
Present.
Councilmember Merlo.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Do we have any changes to the agenda?
There are none.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll
Move.
With a motion from Councilmember Merlo and a second from Mayor Pro Tem Davis, City Clerk?
To approve the agenda, Mayor Ibarra,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Councilmember Larios,
Yes.
Councilmember Merlo.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we'll take public comment from the members of the audience. If you'd like to provide a public comment through Zoom, please click the raise hand button. At this time, the public is encouraged to address the city council on any matter that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. The public will also be given a chance to comment on matters which are on the posted agenda during city council deliberation on those specific matters. Are there any public comments at this time? Are there any public comments on Zoom? We'll give everybody a minute.
Just as a reminder, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom. There are no raised hands at this time.
Thank you. Seeing that there's none, we'll now go on to the presentation item. City Clerk, item number 1, results of the City of Vernon, April 12th, 2022 general municipal election.
Thank you, Mayor. The city's general municipal election was held on Tuesday, April 12, 2022. Ballots received as of the close of polls on election day were canvassed on election night. 4 additional ballots were postmarked by April 12th and received by Friday, April 15th. So those were canvassed on Monday, April 18th. Exhibit A to the resolution has been updated to reflect the 4 additional ballots. There are copies at the council seats as well as on the table by the door for the public. Pursuant to the Elections Code, Resolution number 2022-09, reciting the facts of the election is presented to the council for its consideration. Pursuant to the city's charter, the mayoral rotation also occurs at this meeting, and Mayor Pro Tem Davis has elected to pass his term. So Councilmember Lopez will serve as mayor and Councilmember Larios will serve as Mayor Pro Tem. At this time, it would be appropriate to administer the oath of office to Councilmember Melissa Ibarra.
Don't we have to take a motion?
Oh, yeah, let's vote on the resolution. Thank
Okay,
you.
does council have any questions on this item? Are there any public comment on this item? May I have a motion for this item?
I move.
I'll second Lopez.
With a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Davis and the second one from Councilmember Lopez, City Clerk?
To adopt resolution number 2022-09, reciting the facts of the general municipal election and declaring the results. Mayor Ibarra.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez.
Yes.
Councilmember Larios.
Yes.
Councilmember Merlo.
Yes.
Motion carries. At this time, it would be appropriate to administer the oath of office. If you please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name,
I, Melissa,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of
and the
California
Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear truth, faith, and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of
and the
California,
Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm gonna do this off the top of my head because I never really did a speech for this one, but I want to say thank you for everybody, staff members, residents, and giving me this final opportunity for the next 5 years to continue growing the city with you guys. Thank you very much for everything.
Oh, I did. I messed that one up.
Sorry.
Mayor Lopez, I think we are ready for you to take over the meeting.
Thank you, City Clerk. We're going to move on to item number 2, the Employee Service Pin Awards for March 2022. Human Resources Director Earl will present the item.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the City Council. During the month of March, we had 5 city employees achieve service milestones with the city. I believe we have 3 of them present this morning in the chamber to be recognized. We'd like to start off with Jeff Fraga being recognized for 15 years. Jeff, if you could come up forward, please. Jeff was hired as a field crew member in the Public Utilities Department on March 26, 2007. Since that time, he's held the positions of Systems Coordinator, Electric Dispatcher, CAD Technician, and currently serves as Gas Systems Technician, a position he's held since January 4, 2016. Please join me in congratulating Jeff Fraga on 15 years of service to the city. Next, we'd like to recognize Todd Dusenberry for 15 years of service. Todd, if you could come forward. Todd was hired as a Systems Coordinator 1 in the Public Utilities Department on March 12, 2007, and since that time has held the positions of Systems Supervisor, Operations Supervisor, Compliance Officer, Utilities Compliance Manager, Utilities Operations Manager, and on September 3rd, 2017 was promoted to Assistant General Manager. Please join me in congratulating Todd Dusenberry on 15 years of service to the city. Next, we'd like to recognize Luis T. Vasquez for 20 years of service. Luis, if you could come forward, please. Luis was hired as a Vernon Service Officer in the Police Department on March 10th, 2002, and then was promoted to Police Officer on April 7th, 2003. Please join me in congratulating Luis T. Vasquez on 20 years of service to the city of Vernon. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go on to item number 3, the recognition of retired employee Charles B. Montoya. Human Resources Director Earl will present the item.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. Mr. Montoya was not able to be present this morning, so we'll make sure that he gets the proclamation presented to him. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to item number 4 is the DMV Donate Life California Month. City Clerk Pope will present the item, and Johnny Lamucci, One Legacy of Ambassador, is here to receive the proclamation.
This is a proclamation of the mayor and the city council of the city of Vernon acknowledging the month of April 2022 as DMV Donate Life California Month. Whereas Donate Life California is the state authorized nonprofit organization responsible for managing the organ, eye, and tissue donor registry. Their mission is to save lives by inspiring people to sign up with the state organ, eye, and tissue donor registry. And whereas organ, eye, tissue, marrow, and blood donation are life-giving acts recognized worldwide as expressions of compassion to those in need. And whereas more than 100,000 individuals nationwide and more than 20,000 in California are currently on the National Organ Transplant waiting list, and on average, 17 people die each day while waiting due to the shortage of donated organs. And whereas the need for organ donations among Hispanic, Latino, and African-American communities is especially urgent. And whereas a single individual's donation of the heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and small intestine can save up to 8 lives. Donation of tissue can save and heal the lives of up to 75 others. And a single blood donation can help 3 people in need. And whereas organ donors saved more than 40,000 lives last year, the most ever. And whereas only about half of all Californians are registered with the state authorized Donate Life California Donor Registry to ensure their wishes to be organ, eye, and tissue donors are honored. And whereas California residents can sign up with the Donate Life California Donor Registry when applying for or renewing their driver's licenses or ID cards at the California Department of Motor Vehicles, or by signing up at www.donatelifecalifornia.org. Or for Spanish speakers, www.donevidacalifornia.org. And whereas California residents interested in saving a life through liver kidney donation may visit www.livingdonationcalifornia.org. And whereas the city of Vernon wishes to invite all residents and businesses within the city of Vernon to acknowledge DMV Donate Life California Month, and encourages all residents and employees and community members to sign up with the Donate Life California Donor Registry. Now therefore, the mayor and the city council of the city of Vernon, on behalf of its employees, residents, and businesses, hereby acknowledges the month of April 2022 as DMV Donate Life California Month. This proclamation is presented to the One Legacy organization by the Honorable Mayor Lopez for and on behalf of the city council of the city of Vernon, this 19th day of April 2022.
Thank you, council.
Yeah.
We'll get you the mic.
This is very special to me. I'm going on 6 years. I had a heart transplant. I didn't even know I had a heart issue. I referee high school and college soccer. I played college baseball, been an athlete all my life. I went for a physical. At the physical, they told me they're going to send me to the hospital by paramedics. And I kind of looked at him like, something's not right. And he says, what do you mean? I said, I'm fine. He says, no, you're not. You're going. So to make a long story short, I eventually went into cardiac arrest. And when I woke up, this is what was implanted in me. It's a total artificial heart. I was 1 in 50 in the US that had it. I lived with it for 206 days. And then on August 22nd of 16, I got the gift from a young man. Without his gift, I wouldn't have seen my kids graduate, college, high school, my grandbaby being born. It really is a touching thing. We have the transplant games coming up in July. I would like to invite everybody. We're hosting it. I'm the team manager for the Southern California transplant team. We have approximately 150 athletes. It's a nationwide ordeal. Next year, we'll be traveling to Australia for the World Games. It's going to be held in San Diego, July 29th through August 3rd. Huge, huge, very, very emotional. Without the gift of organ donation, none of this would be able to take place. I met a gentleman, and some of you guys probably know him, Rod Carew. He had a heart kidney transplant. Another athlete. This can come upon anybody, anytime, at any age. So think about it when you register for your driver's license, or even just go online and register. We also do a rose float. Anybody's welcome to come decorate the rose float. City Council, I'll invite you guys for a special event. But it's to get involved with the operation of organ donation. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. We will now go on to item number 5, is the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget workshop. City Administrator Fandino and Finance Director Williams will present the item.
Good morning, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Today we have a preliminary budget that we'd like to share with you. City staff has been working diligently to get something out. Embedded in this budget, obviously there's some issues that we have with ongoing increase of natural gas prices, which we'll talk a little bit about in the budget process. And also, please keep in mind that we have not concluded negotiations with our labor teams. So the budget numbers may change. And with that, I'll turn it over to Finance Director Scott Williams.
Thank you. Yes, good morning, Honorable Mayor, honorable members of the City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present for the council's consideration, review, analysis, and ultimately direction regarding the operation and capital budgets for upcoming fiscal year 2022 and 23. For anyone who's viewing remotely, or a copy of the budget as part of the staff report and part of the agenda located on the city's website. And as always, for anyone unfamiliar with the process, the fiscal year budget, we always want to note that it spans from July 1 through the following June 30 of the next year. So once adopted, the effective date of this budget will be July 1st. As the city administrator pointed out, this is a cumulative work product, and what you have in front of you represents months of work that spanned all city departments, the draft, the review process, ultimately presenting that to the city administrator and final changes being made, and just working through the various challenges that we will discuss. So just want to recognize all city departments as well as the finance team for this work product you have in front of you. Ready? And I'll get to the next slide. Oops, sorry. One back, please. Sorry, it looks like it's not working. Okay. So we begin our discussion this morning with a look at both short and long-term strategies as we assembled this year's budget. And the first that you see there is the management of uncertainty. So although the uncertainties that we face are quite different than a year ago, and especially 2 years ago. So while the state of emergency is largely behind us in terms of crisis, we have a new set of challenges, and many of them are on everyone's mind. The first are cost escalations that every business, every household is experiencing. And we're seeing a rate of inflation that we haven't witnessed in decades. To address this on a national level, we're seeing interest rates. So the cost of borrowing and an escalation of interest rates, and it's happening pretty quickly. Coming out of 2 years of state of emergency or more than, we have supply chain challenges. This is especially felt in our public utility. And as City Administrator mentioned, we have energy costs, and we'll discuss more about this, but particularly related to gas. And this is significant. And although it's not the, just checking the futures this morning example, it's not the exchange we use, but on a national level, up until today, gas had doubled in price. It's more than 90% just year to date. So these are challenges that that we have to manage and represent part of this budget. Next there, we have the optimization of resources, and that corresponds to our long-term strategy of efficiency. That's always the goal of the use of resources. Looking long-term, a budget is it's a framework and a guide, and ultimately for fiscal and responsibility and accountability. And related to that, sustainability, and we'll talk a little bit later about reserves. What that means in short is that we're not simply looking to get through the next fiscal year, but we're looking long-term and to put the city and the utility on a trajectory of long-term success. Lastly, just a couple of factors before we move on. as we forecast, because the beginning of all budgets are revenues and available resources. So there's a number of economic assumptions and considerations, some of which we already mentioned, but we actually have to look globally. We see that with current events overseas and the impacts that we feel right at home in terms of petroleum prices. We look nationally, we're looking at economic trends and what we, the best information we have of what's on the horizon, and then ultimately regionally and finally locally. So we take a look at how tax trends in particular will affect us locally. And then from there, we make our expenditure estimates. Okay, so this is a look at general fund balance and a trend of it. It's frankly one of my favorite slides because it kind of tells the whole story, the last half decade in one slide. And what you see on the far left-hand side is at the beginning of this measurement where we began with actually a negative fund balance and things don't change overnight. You see moving to the next fiscal year. And these are all audited results, by the way, kind of working our way out of the problem. Finally, 2019, a slight surplus. And then as you can see in the out years and actual continued trajectory of success in this respect. And this is where it's reflected in general fund cash reserves and fund balance. Next, we have an overview of general fund expenditures. On the far left-hand side, you have the current adopted budget, which we recently reported mid-year. And things are on track, especially both in respect to revenues and expenditures. And in the center column is the proposed budget that the council has in front of them. I'll comment on the far right-hand side and what we have in the following pages for reference. I won't cover every bullet point on the next couple of pages. It's there for reference, but there are footnotes to some of the variances that you see, but just high level. Salaries, this 500,000 is largely flat year over year. It simply represents step increases. Benefits, this is primarily driven by our pension costs, and the council will recall we have a current project for hopefully a pension obligation bond issuance to address this, as well as other strategies. Supplies and services, and finally, capital. So supplies and services, and we'll comment on this in the department section, but some of that is the actual planned escalation year over year. The contract with Los Angeles County Fire has built-in increases, so there's actually no surprise there. And then finally, the capital expenditures. So there are several elements to this: the pavement management plan, vehicle replacement, building improvements, there's the West Side plan, and then significantly the streets improvements. We are this will be the first year of a 5-year plan. These represent significant capital expenditures, but once completed, this will be good for decades to come in terms of the streets improvements. I will pause there and just mention that this series of workshops is meant to be interactive. So if there's any questions, we don't have to wait until the end for comments or. Next up, we have general fund revenue. So these are the footnotes that are there for reference unless the council has any questions or comments. Okay, general fund revenue. So this is a distribution of what comprises the.
Scott, can I interrupt you? Can we go back to the capital? Is Dan here? Dan's not here?
No.
Manny, can you come up and talk about the street improvements to Vernon?
I was gonna ask a question on that. Is that because we delayed it the last couple of years of COVID?
Yes, in part, but also there was a final streets report to give a full assessment because it actually, there's a methodology to that, but it spans 5 years. So that's why I say this represents a significant amount, but once completed, it will be good for decades.
So,
in the
so Manuel Garcia will talk about what that street project improvement looks like, the amount we're gonna spend every year and the 5-year plan, and how he's working with the utilities department and so forth.
One moment, Manny, could you move the mic for yourself? Could you speak more into the mic, please? Just face it towards you.
Better?
Yeah.
Mayor, city council, Mr. Fandino, department heads. So overall, when I look at the city, as you drive through the city, you see the pavement management is key. The city is about transportation, movement of goods and services. So we've looked at it. We've had a company come out and do an assessment, and we see where the opportunities lie to improve. So we're looking at a 5-year plan. Approximate cost is going to be $20 to $21 million. And this first fiscal year is the first phase of that. It requires coordination between the various departments to make sure that we don't dig up the street twice. You know, we want to make sure that once we pave that street, it stays in good shape. We don't come afterwards and do some other type of capital improvement, which forces us to dig up the street. In general, it's been a while since we've done a major capital improvement in terms of the streets. And as we've seen with general all infrastructure throughout the United States, where you're talking about bridges, water systems, electrical systems, railroads, in general, it's time for us to really pay some attention to the maintenance and longevity of our transportation system, which is primarily our streets.
And I think to note is we've deferred this over the last 7 years, any type of street maintenance or improvements to the streets with minimal paving and so forth with certain streets here in Vernon. We feel that we're at the end of our life of some of the streets and that they do need to be repaired. And moving forward, we want to put together the project, which is over $20 million. Now, grant funding, I've already reached out to finance and to Public Works to find out what we can do to try to get funding or grant funding for improvements to our streets. And that would have been one of your questions. But that's something that we're looking at right now and see what we can get out there. Again, Measure M, which was passed by the state, which goes and allocates dollars for cities. Our allocation is less than $1,200 this year for street improvements, which is, go ahead.
And likewise, there are countywide sales tax driven measures. So if you think about how much this city produces in sales tax as well as property tax, but sales tax in particular that goes as distributed through Metro, it's the same thing. The city gets virtually nothing. I mean, 1,200 is as good as nothing. So there's grant funding that's we're aggressively looking at, and as you'll see in an upcoming slide, how much has already been obtained for things like the Atlantic Street project, but you know, there's more to be done. And also, this is why reserves are in place. This speaks to the importance of that, as well as just the long-term plans, as the city administrator pointed out, because this is a 5-year pavement management plan.
And the management plan is phased out so that you address the locations in which you get your most return for the investment. So it's based on transportation flow and the economic impact of making that street improvement. Once again, the city of Vernon is about transportation. Goods and services come in and out, and the streets are basically the highway of business.
Sorry, I have a follow-up question. Did you guys include the cost of increases that have been happening? How everything increases every month? Are you guys including that in the budget? Or are you guys just leaving it flat?
we always look at the cost of doing business or procuring services. So yes, it is. However, obviously, an 8% increase year to year was generally basically unpredictable at the time. But that's something that we need to take consideration. And again, this inflation is a snapshot right now. It's not to say that next year maybe it won't be 8%, 3% might be the case.
Yeah, but for this one, did you include the 8%, assuming that it's going to go up another 8% within the year?
It's a budget, so it is. We do have a contingency plan on the amount.
There's typically 10% built-in contingency, so that would cover current year inflation, which is above 8%,
That's
as Manny
correct.
said.
And are you bringing this back to council so we can see the roadmap of what you guys are going to be, your plan, your roadmap, what's priority, what's not priority?
That is a great question. We have an amazing engineering team, and I can't wait to have our engineering team come up and do a presentation on all the exciting projects that we have lined up, just like airplanes ready to land. So the answer to that is definitely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
So again, if council has any questions throughout the budget, just stop us, ask questions, and I'll ask questions throughout the process as well.
Okay. Okay. A look at general fund revenue. So what you see here is a distribution. So the budget is based on revenues and available resources. And the distribution you see here is for the general fund only. And where do our revenues, our ongoing resources come from? And as you can see, more than 70% it involves taxes and licenses, and business licenses actually a tax. And on the next slide, what we have is, I'm not going to read through these bullet points, but this is again a reference tool. So we have the high level categories that you see distributed on the pie chart, and what rolls up into these categories. So the largest section, more than 70% of general fund revenues are taxes. And business license is in fact a tax, and that's why it's listed under that section.
Scott, you want to talk about future measures that we need to go back to the public?
Yeah, can go back one, please. So we have two major revenue sources that are sunsetting. Both of them, well, one of them related to property tax, and that is the public safety parcel tax. It's not expiring this year, but that is part of that large tax section. And so that needs to be addressed. And that's part of when we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, long-term sustainability. It's part of that discussion. And even more significantly, another tax, and that's our utility users tax. Now, the sunsetting of that is not that tax going away, but actually going back to a lesser percentage. The percentage of the current measure is very significant to the general fund. It's part of the success that we see in that long-term trend. And frankly, it's an integral part of our long-term sustainability plan. So those two need to be addressed. Our sales tax is doing very well. The add-on, the transaction and use tax has actually performed a little better than expected. There was a little bit of uncertainty because it tends to revolve around, or it's destination-based. And so we couldn't know when it was passed how many of the businesses are making sales that actually land in Vernon, and it's been better than expected. And I attribute some of that to building construction materials. It's a major revenue source. Okay, next up, two more, please. One back, I'm sorry. Okay, general fund expenditures. Where do these resources go once they are budgeted? you see three major categories: public safety, public works, and capital outlay. And you notice that those three categories, but two categories of public safety, that comprises about 80% or close to 80% of general fund expenditures. And this is appropriate. This is what makes a city a city, is public safety and infrastructure. It is what makes businesses choose to plant roots within our borders. And the fact that this Vernon is such a safe place to make an investment and to conduct business as well as to live. And that infrastructure such as the streets improvement plan, but also everything, our water system, sidewalks, that goes into that. So this comprises the majority of our budget. Next, we have capital outlay funding. So this is a distribution of where the funding comes from. And as we mentioned a few minutes ago, you can see that a significant portion actually is from grants funding. So the majority of that will be for the Atlantic Street project. But as the administrator pointed out, we will be going after more funding aggressively to try to address the streets needs in particular. Shifting over to the enterprise fund expenditures. So we have the major categories of salary and benefits, supplies and services, and capital. And again, same as the general fund table. On the left-hand slide, we have the current year budget and then the upcoming proposed budget. Now, I'll speak to the variances on the far right-hand side. Notice the swing in salaries. Well, that was the acquisition of Malberg. And we have that footnoted on the next slide, but it was just shy of 17 FTEs, and that was part of the acquisition of the plan. So no surprise there, as well as benefits associated with that, pension costs and so forth. And it should be pointed out that this wasn't simply matched off, but actually represents savings over the PPTA, no longer as part of the upcoming fiscal year budget. Supplies and services, the majority of this is part of what we discussed at the beginning, cost escalations and cost of gas, as well as just the general cost of energy. That's largely what is represented in those increases. But we do want to point out that with the acquisition of the plant, there is savings that offsets what would have been even higher cost escalations as a result of the replacing the PPTA. Finally, capital, this part of the decrease is that we are deploying all of the bond funding that was previously issued. And rather than cover every bullet, the next slide is largely what we just discussed, and there for your reference. Enterprise fund revenue. Again, the majority of it is light and power, estimated at $230 million for the upcoming fiscal year. Expenditures, the majority is the cost of sales and cost of energy. Enterprise fund funding for capital outlay. And so we see the use of fund balance, but we also see bond funding both in water and electric. And so what this represents is the final use of the bond issuances from last and previous fiscal year, or last year and year before, at very favorable rates. And that's going according to plan, and it's the right use of that funding. Now we'll spend a few minutes in the next few slides just discussing the departmental changes for all city departments, city and utility. And the first is, so you have the current fiscal year in the second column and the proposed, and then we'll speak to the variances on the far right-hand side. So for the council budget, you see the decrease, and part of that was there was a vehicle budgeted last year. And so this year represents, we don't need an additional vehicle this year. City administration, you were given an update and it will be reflected in the book. But for now, there is one sheet that shows the update to that for staffing. So there's actually several components to this, but according to the updated schedule, instead of the 473, it's actually 300,000. And more than a third of that is professional services for legislative matters and lobbying activity. Other than that, it's largely flat year over year. There were a couple of staffing changes. A couple of other notable items. You have the decrease in human resources. That's because we budget within that budget post-retirement benefits in the form of insurance. And because of how the market has performed, that has actually decreased. We, in finance, there is the increase of actually our risk. And this is fairly modest, especially given cost escalations and everything that happened the previous year that was driving risk premiums. This is a fairly small amount. So we've actually performed pretty well. Information technology represents upgrades, an upcoming ERP system. I have a note on environmental and health. Just a second. There's actually professional services for environmental cleanup. That's what that represents. Next slide, please. So police, we have, that's largely driven by pension costs. And that is not a controllable expense, but we are addressing it. And we have also on the fire side, there are planned increases. And I have a note. There's planned increases to fire, but this represents a savings of actually 5.7 million. So it's important to note that had we not made this conversion over to fire, so there are built-in escalations, but had we stayed the course with what we were doing, it would represent nearly 6 million more in costs. And of this, there's also built-in 1.7 million in conversion costs. Those are the one-time startup costs that span the first few years. And there's going to be 1 year left on that. Now, Public Works, we discussed this previously, but that it represents, there are step increases built into that, as well as benefits costs, as every department has. But we have the capital projects as represented, funded by grant funds in that pie chart we looked at. West Side Plan, Pavement Management Plan, the Gateway Arch, streets improvements, West Side, and so forth. That's what those represent. And then VPU. So this is largely driven by gas costs and the cost of energy. Okay. Keep going, please. So these are all the notes for your reference. One more. Okay, a look at FTEs, staffing changes. So there's very little change to staffing other than the acquisition of the plant, as you can see there in the public utilities section.
Scott, just to be clear, the 16.75 increase in 2023 for public utilities is the acquisition of MGS's employees?
Yes, that's correct. Okay. Okay, summing up with just highlights, it's important to note that when we put together a budget and present this to the council, it represents what we refer to as a structurally balanced budget. This is a this is a critical factor that we repeat regularly, and what it means is that it relates to sustainability. It means that ongoing and continuous expenditures are matched off against ongoing and continuous revenues. That's our starting point. Otherwise, we're going negative on an operational basis, and we have to take a harder look internally at what we're doing operationally. And that's when we talk about this thing, months-long process, that's part of it. So there are one-time costs related to capital, but capital don't, while there will be continued maintenance for whatever it is that we build or improve, they don't represent the same thing as staffing costs and pensions and so forth that are continuous. There is a very careful monitoring of significant increases to energy sector. We've talked about this, inflation trends, as well as the challenges to acquire equipment. In some cases, we look to acquire equipment ahead of time for the utility in particular, just so that we don't find ourselves in an even more challenging situation. The reason for infrastructure improvements, we commented on this earlier, but this is what enables us to deliver services to the community. It's both safety and infrastructure. And then finally, and on the next slide, we have the recommendation of special purpose reserves. And this is general fund only, but what we're actually recommending is, rather than having one large line item that you see in the audited financials of unassigned fund balance, we are recommending special purpose reserves that we regularly deposit into when we finish to the good, such as this last fiscal year and what we would anticipate this coming fiscal year in a couple of months. And the recommendations are there, and these can be arranged any way that or direct, but these are the recommendations. And the first is economic uncertainty. That always tops the list in terms of what we should be thinking about, challenges ahead, and it means just that, uncertain, something unforeseen. A couple of years ago, it was the pandemic. Now we're approaching near double-digit inflation. These are just things that we have to be thinking about so that we're frankly not caught flat-footed in an emergency or something of that nature. That's what it's there for. Capital reserves. We're starting small with a couple of $1 million recommendation, but just as discussed with the streets improvement, we want to be depositing to this so that it's there, we know it's there, and then in the out years, we simply deploy those funds at the council's direction. Retirement benefits. Although we see a leveling, we expect a leveling trend in the years to come. We see an awful lot of volatility in the market. Those are things that we cannot control. So if CalPERS has a bad year, we want to be able to tap this fund as appropriate. Technology replacement. This is just integral to everything that we provide in terms of infrastructure to the city, from public safety to everything that we do internally. And finally, fleet replacement. This is just building a savings account for ourselves so that when and if it is the right time to replace and actually realize savings on maintenance, by replacement, that's what it's there for. So these are the recommendations to the council. And finally, what's on the horizon for our workshops timeline? We have 2 more planned. And this is the opportunity to come back. We won't repeat the entire presentation, but just kind of touch on some key points. It's the opportunity for the council to ask questions, recommend some changes, or to simply move forward. In June, per the city code, we will be presenting the final budget to the council, and the effective date once appropriated and approved will be July 1st. So that concludes our presentation, and we are available for any discussion or direction at this time.
The May 3rd and May 17th, we will have department heads give presentations on some of the capital projects that they're doing, as well as where some of the funding is coming from for some of the capital. So VPU and Public Works will be doing the majority of those presentations on May 3rd and May 17th. So with that, we'd like to open up any questions to City Council.
Does the council have any questions? Being that there are none, we'll move on. We'll now go on to consent calendar. All matters
I think,
listed.
Public maybe want to comment on the budget.
Is there any public comments on the budget? Do we have anybody on Zoom?
Mayor, I do have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Scott, you did bring up the public safety parcel tax. When's it due to sunset?
Let me, get an answer to that really quick. I believe it is, I think we have less than 2 years on that, but I'll get an answer. About 30 seconds here. And we have a little bit of time, meaning a few years on the UUT. But we know that that isn't passed overnight, and
I believe it's 2023 where the public safety tax is set to expire. So that's something that we would work with the city clerk and making sure that we do outreach to the community. And we would have to be a ballot measure.
that's it. That's correct. 2023 and 2028 on the UUT. So again, it's a few years out, but it's being mentioned now because it's such a significant part of the general fund revenue base. We don't want to get to the end of that and find ourselves surprised.
Do you have any other questions, council?
There's a public comment, if we can do public comment.
Is there any public comment?
My name is Susie Ybarra, I'm resident.
If you could please move the mic, excuse me, ma'am, the microphone, could you please adjust it?
Thank you. On those 2 that are about to expire, is this something that's going to go back to the voters? I think when we approved it the last time, we knew that it was going to sunset and not just automatically, at least that was what was, would that go back to the voters?
That's correct. They both sunset, and that's why we're mentioning them at this time. They are both voter approved, and we want to be bringing those forward, but we
Right.
don't want to surprise the voters any more than we ourselves as an organization.
Right. And we also don't want you to automatically forecast to retain your revenue automatically, because the whole purpose of that approval was when that barcode was going down rather up, we were way down. So we knew we had to do something. Now you guys have managed the budget very well. And I have to say your paperwork too was great. I just want to make sure you don't say, well, we have this much money, let's stick this in and keep it going. If you have the money to continue what you're doing. Okay, the second thing that I wanted to bring up was I saw in your presentation that police only, the explanation for the police differences were increase and I think benefits or.
Yeah,
There was nothing to indicate that additional police is required for the city of Vernon. Is that something you're looking? I don't want it automatically because you're going to add whatever you're going to add.
So this year-over-year increase does not include additional officers. This actually primarily represents pension costs. So the public safety is the largest component of our pension expenditures. There's nothing unusual about that. That's every city. So this only represents that. That's not a variable we can control. But two important notes. One is that looking long-term on the horizon, because there was a change made 10 years ago to the pension system. And a long time in a pension system is 50 years, not 10 years. So we see in those long-term out years that the system correcting itself. So that's important to note. And then in terms of any change to staffing, where there's a consideration of additional officers, if and when necessary, that's brought forward and called out separately.
And I think the city is evaluating right now with the police chief, and he's welcome to come up. But we are evaluating of getting more police officers out in the streets. We do have certain things right now that are prohibiting us from going to full force, but I've been working with the chief, and the chief is working with HR to make sure that we can get more officers out in the streets. Now, that's not to say that we don't need more police officers. The police chief is aware of it, and he's evaluating what his force will look like, but we are forecasting of putting more police officers in the streets in the coming years.
I know, but what about this year? I don't care in coming years.
Well, Chief, you want to give us an update of what's going on with getting more officers?
Good morning, Honorable Mayor, new council member Ibarra. Yeah, that's a great question. You may have seen that there's an increase of 2 positions within the police department coming up. Trying to forecast out with working with our city administrator, we've actually overhired by 1 position at this point, anticipating some retirements that we know are going to take place. I do have, unfortunately, some officers that are out injured right now. So, and then I do have an officer that's deployed overseas to support our NATO partners, which we're really proud of. And I believe we've mentioned that. So once we get some of those folks back, you'll see additional police officers out in the field, but constantly analyzing that information, looking at our crime trends, looking at what's occurring in the city. You know, I think there's not a police chief in the state of California that would say he doesn't want any more police officers. I want as many police officers as I can get. But it takes time to get there. We introduced 3 new ones, I think 2 weeks ago, and we've got another police officer in the academy now. So we've got, our numbers are going to increase, and hopefully by this time next year, we'll look at maybe adding a few more positions. But again, it's very dependent on slow growth and planning and anticipating retirements.
Chief, can you talk about the minimum staffing levels and what they mean and how we are going to ramp up from minimum staffing levels?
Yeah, so currently our minimum staffing is 3 officers in the field plus a supervisor. During the daytime, that number actually increases by quite a bit because we've got detectives that are here working. We've got admin staff that is here. We're looking at potentially increasing our minimum staffing to maybe 4 officers in the field and then a supervisor, which will give us some flexibility to do some different stuff. Right now, you're well aware that we're rolling out our host teams. We've got some funding for that. So I'm supplementing some of the stuff that we're trying to do with overtime funds. We're getting reimbursement for some of that stuff. But long term, as we get our staffing numbers back to where we need to be, and again, that's through our recruitment and some of the stuff, staff that we have out that are injured. When we get them back, we'd like to push our minimum staffing back to 4 officers in the field and a supervisor. So it'd be 5 cars driving around versus the 4 that you see now.
Thank you.
Do we have any additional public comments? Or questions from council? Okay, I apologize that I'm going to have to step away from the meeting today. But Mayor Pro Tem Larios is going to take over the meeting.
Thank you so much, Mayor Lopez. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold, so we're gonna have to bear with it. We will now go to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are to be approved with one motion. Items may be removed from the consent calendar by any member of the council. Those items removed will be considered immediately after the consent calendar. Does any council wish to pull any items from the consent calendar?
I'd like to pull 19.
Okay, with the exception of item number 19, may I have a motion for consent calendar?
I'll move, Ibarra.
Second.
Is there a second?
Can you please
Your
make sure your mic's on?
We have a motion by Councilmember Ibarra, seconded by Councilmember Merlo to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item number 19. I'll call the roll. Mayor Pro Tem Larios,
Yes.
Councilmember Merlo, Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Do you guys, can we go to the item Councilmember Ibarra requested to take out?
Who's going to present 19? I just want to understand it. I kind of remember what the steps are, but if we could refresh it.
So with the Our Planet Earth, they have certain hurdles that they were supposed to meet every single year per the contract. And then they put down a deposit in order to get back that money. They would have to meet certain hurdles. Our Planet Earth has been on a trajectory of bringing in additional load to the city and growing their business. However, with the economic times right now of procuring equipment and meeting certain conditions, it's been nearly impossible for Our Planet Earth to get certain equipment on site and to meet some of those hurdles. The spread that we're talking about is very minimal. And so Our Planet Earth has reached out to the city and said, look, we've been a great partner with the city. We want to continue to grow in the city, but we need more capital in order to grow. So they're asking for us to waive the hurdle, which would be equivalent to the deposit of $416,000. They're going to go ahead and procure the equipment and still grow their business and bring in the additional equipment to Our Planet Earth and continue growing their process.
Is this just the one-time hurdle? Because I know there's a few hurdles they have to meet. Is it just for this fiscal year?
It's one of the last hurdles that they have to meet. So they've already grown, and Abe, correct me if I'm wrong, but they've already grown the last three hurdles they've already met.
Is this working? Yes. This time around, January 2022, they were supposed to reach 4.8 megawatts in terms of hurdle to avoid withhold of the deposit. They reached 4.74. So the city and the utility determined that's close enough. So that's what, if council determined decided that's not meeting the hurdle, they will lose $417,000, which is an escrow. But the recommendation from BPU and city administration is that this is close enough, the spirit of cooperation with our businesses. We asking council to conclude, they have met that hurdle.
And this
So
is the last hurdle?
There is one more. The next one would call for fiscal year 22. In January 2023, they had another hurdle of reaching 8 megawatts. But given where they are today, which is 4.74 megawatts, they can they are making improvements in their processes. They are talking to their investors and their contractors. They're making headways to get to that, but they are asking, in case something happens, at least the time requirement, which is 2023, be left out, but they still have that $416,000 in escrow, which will hold them until they get to that 8 megawatts. But the timely requirement to get to 8 megawatts will be waived. So that's the secondary requirement. There is one more hurdle they have to meet.
And again, in order to maintain the business friendly, we feel that it's in the best interest to assist our planet Earth and meeting this hurdle. We felt that it was close enough, but we also are recommending that they use the money to reinvest and get capital. Certain things happened in that process. It was called COVID-19, which no one saw coming, and that inhibited them from moving on in their processes. So we feel that they are going to grow and that they are growing as a company. They've also reached out to us for more space, and so that's good news. We feel that the company is thriving and will continue to thrive in the next couple of years.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Mayor, you're on
Mayor,
mute.
you're on mute.
Mayor Pro Tem Larios, I think you're muted.
I'm sorry. Are there any more questions from council? Are there any public comments?
And for those on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature. There are no raised
No.
hands on Zoom.
Okay, may I please have a motion to approve item number 19?
I'll move, Ibarra.
A motion by Councilmember Ibarra, seconded by Councilmember Davis, to approve and authorize the city administrator to grant the request from Our Planet Earth to consider that the January 2022 consumption hurdle target has been achieved, and approve and authorize the city administrator to grant the request from Our Planet Earth to waive the third hurdle target of 8 megawatts and to release the final deposit of $416,667 once the third electrical consumption hurdle of 8 milliwatts is met. I'll call the roll. Mayor Pro Tem Larios,
Yes.
Councilmember Merlot,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you so much. We will now go to new business. Agenda item number 20 is the updated official statement for the City of Vernon Electric System Revenue Bonds 2022 Series A Finance. Director Williams will present the item.
Yes, good morning again, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. The item that you have before you this morning, as you'll recall, in December at the financing of the acquisition of Malberg, we had two components. One was a new issuance for the acquisition of the plant, and the other for the benefits based on market conditions at the time was a refunding of existing debt. The latter is what this represents. And there were terms in the original bonds that required this. The first call is actually later this year, which makes the earliest date in May. It's what we call a forward refunding. That's what this represents. So what we're requesting this morning is authorization of the updated official statements. There's no material changes, just some small updates to the utility, the wording, and the red line is included in the staff report. But it is significant to note just the timing of the issuance of this, that at the time, city administrator and myself had a lot of discussion surrounding should we go forward with this at the time, because there's a premium that you pay that is kind of like an insurance policy. And given the state of the fixed income market and the escalation of rates, we pretty much it was timed very, very well. And the benefit to the city is approximately 12 million. And and even more so if you consider current market rates. So that worked out well. And this is just simply moving forward in the background for the final issuance. And as noted there, our underwriter Goldman, per the agreement, that the bonds will be sold on the 5th of May.
Thank you so much. Does council have any questions for staff? No. Are there any public comments?
There are no raised hands on Zoom.
Okay, may I have a motion?
I'll move. Ibarra.
Motion by Councilmember Ibarra, seconded by Councilmember Davis to adopt resolution number 2022-10, authorizing and approving updated official statement for certain electric system revenue bonds. I'll call the roll. Mayor Pro Tem Larios.
Yes.
Councilmember Merlo.
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Yes.
Councilmember Davis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you so much. And we'll now go to item number 21 is the single-use foodware accessories and standard condiments. Health and Environmental Control Director again will present the item.
Your mic.
Freddie, can you make sure the mic's turned on?
Good morning, Honorable Interim Mayor, City Council, and congratulations again, man. So the item before you is single-use foodware accessory and standard condiment. This is a resolution. I mean, there's going to be an ordinance that I want to bring to attention. So staff is recommending that this is not, it's exempt from CEQA. And staff is recommending that you waive the full reading and introduce and conduct the first reading of the ordinance number 1280, adding chapter 8.15 to the Title 8, Health and Safety, to the Vernon Municipal Code that will regulate single-use foodware accessories and standard condiment. And staff is requesting that council direct staff to schedule a second reading and adoption of the May 3rd, 2022 City Council meeting. So on the background on this, there's a group in California called Californians Against Waste. That's a big environmental group that state that every year in the United States, an estimated 561 billion disposable foodware items are used, resulting in a whopping 4.9 million tons of waste. Per CAW, unused food accessories, including utensils, straws, napkins, condiments, packages, and other clogged landfills. It complicates recycling and pollutes streets and waterways in all our communities. CAW also estimates that providing food and beverage accessories only upon request to customers and requiring reusable food service where for specified on-site dining will significantly reduce unnecessary waste and save businesses and local governments money. It's also research estimate that restaurants in the United States spend roughly $19 billion purchasing disposable foodware items. And also per CAW, California restaurants that have voluntarily made the transition to a combination of buy request and reusable foodwares have been proven to save between $3,000 and $21,000 per year per restaurants. While doing that, also reducing waste and greenhouse gas emissions. Furthermore, CAW estimate California local governments and taxpayers spend over $428 million annually in ongoing efforts to clean up and prevent litter in streets, storm drains, parks, and waterways. So currently, existing law in California, as many of us are aware, prohibits a full service restaurant from providing single-use plastic straws to customers unless requested by the consumer, and places the duty to enforce this prohibition on specified state and local health and environmental health officers and their agents. Existing law specifies that the first and second violation of these provisions results in a notice of violation, and any subsequent violation is an infraction that is punishable by a fine of $25 each day that the full service restaurant is in violation, but not to exceed an annual total of $200. So with that said, on October 2021, Governor Newsom signed into law California State Assembly Bill AB 1276. AB 1276 prohibits a food facility. So if you kind of look before, if you were a food service, you were under this rule. Now, this one applied to all food facility, including food trucks. So a food facility from providing any single-use foodware accessory or standard condiments as defined to a consumer unless requested by the consumer as provided. The bill prohibits those items from being bundled or packaged in a way that prohibits the consumer from taking only the item desired. The bill authorized a food facility to ask a drive-through consumer if the consumer wants a single-use foodware accessory in the specified circumstances. This bill requires a food facility using a third-party food delivery platform such as Uber Eats and Postmates. On its menu, the availability of single-use foodware accessories and standard condiments, and only provide those items when requested as provided. The bill will exclude from these requirements correctional institutions, healthcare facilities, residential care facilities, and public and private school cafeterias. So AB 1276 requires a city and county on or before June 1st, 2022 to authorize an enforcement agency to enforce this requirement. AB 1276 will specify that the first and second violation of these provisions results in a notice of violation, and any subsequent violation is an infraction punishable by a fine of $25 per each day in violation, but not to exceed an annual total of $300. By creating a new crime and imposing additional duties on local governing bodies, the bill will impose a state mandated local program, which does bring us to that ordinance 1280. So if that comes to second reading on May 3rd and is approved, then starting June 1st, will be part of our enforcement that if you do go to a restaurant or you purchase food at a food truck, that if you want condiments or you want plastic forks, they actually have to ask you if you do want it. I don't know if you notice that if you go to Starbucks or places like that, if you need a stir for your coffee, it's not outside anymore. You have to ask for it. So that is part of in anticipation of this bill. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Does council have any questions for staff?
I have a question.
These fines, are they set fines by the state, or can we impose or change? And is it coming back to the city? Where is it going?
Yes, it's since it's a state mandated program, but it was not funded. The goal is to have this as so the money do come to us. Me personally, I think chasing a restaurant to charge them $25 a day is probably not, worth the time to do it. However, making sure that they are not wasting this product, I think is the critical part of it. So our goal is not to be, if there's a complaint or we have to go out to, to find them. The goal is to make sure that they understand. I personally foresee that there's more education that needs to be done, so they understand that it has to be asked, or you don't throw 6, forks in that to go order. And so that is our goal, but the money will come to the city if we have to find them.
What are your steps?
So the steps, our first one obviously is going to be once the ordinance is in place, we want to start for education. So we want to make sure, the chain restaurants, I've seen them already doing it because they know it's coming. It's the mom and pop that I know we need to educate, and definitely our food trucks. We want to make sure that they educate on it so that this stuff is, we don't want to get to a point where we need to find them. So we'll start for education. And then if we get complaints, we'll go out the 2 infraction, they get the pass, and then the third one is a fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions from council? No. Are there any public comments?
And as a reminder, on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature if you'd like to make a comment. There are no raised hands at this time.
Okay, may I please have a motion to approve item number 21?
I'll move.
Motion by Councilmember Merlot, seconded by Councilmember Ibarra to find the action exempt under CEQA, waive full reading and introduce and conduct first reading of ordinance number 1280, adding chapter 8.15 to title 8, health and safety of the Vernon Municipal Code, regulating single-use foodware accessories and standard condiments, and to direct staff to schedule second reading and adoption for the May 3rd, 2022 City Council meeting. Mayor Pro Tem Larios,
Yes.
Councilmember Merlot,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you so much. We'll now move to item number 22. Is a purchase contract with Performance Contracting, Inc., Public Utilities General Manager. LMU will present the item.
Good morning, Honorable Mayor Pro Tem and council members. The item before you.
Excuse
is,
me, Abraham, could you please speak into the mic?
All right. The item before you is a purchase contract with PCI, Performance Contracting, Inc. This is about work we have planned coming up next, in about 13 days, next month. It's going to be almost one whole month, just days short of a full month. So it's a very extensive work. It's called a major outage, and it happens almost every 3 to 4 years. And it has to do with the Malbec generation, and Malbec generation power plant is going to go through this planned outage. And the services we're seeking approval for is the scaffolding and installation, removal and replacement services that will be needed to accommodate the work of the many other vendors. It's going to be a big town, and if you happen to drop by there, there's going to be a lot of activity there. So the reason why we're coming to you with this is for 2 reasons. Historically, purchase contracts are awarded to vendors for this type of work approximately 6 months before a scheduled outage to ensure labor and material availability. Unfortunately, staff could not comply with the city's established purchasing guidelines. Due to the acquisition of MGS, staff did not have ample time to issue an RFP for scaffolding and installation services, but did solicit quotes from 4 vendors with industrial power plant or refinery experience that were likely to submit quotes to provide this type of services. Of the 4 vendors that staff reached out to, Performance Consulting Inc., PCI, provided the lowest quotes in response to the informal solicitation of scaffold and installation services. To avoid delays in required maintenance needed for MGS, it is in the best interest of the city to award the purchase contract to PCI to provide the necessary scaffold and installation services during the spring outage. The proposal received from PCI to complete the necessary work is $278,836. In anticipation of additional work and services that may be needed once the scaffolding and installation services commence, the staff recommends adding a contingency amount of $35,000, bringing the total purchase contract value to not to exceed amount of $313,836. dollars. Just like any other repair work, once they're going to be opening all equipment, the turbines, everything is going to be opened up. So basically, MGS is going to see, its doctor, to see, how healthy it is, and also repairs and maintenance that will be needed. So anything, could happen. So we have to build some kind of contingency in case there's a cost overrun. That's why that, $35,000 additional is needed. The proposal and the amendment to the city's terms and conditions have been reviewed and approved as the form by the city attorney's office. The amounts requested are already in VPU's generation and operations account, and funds are available to pay for the services. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Does council have any questions for staff? No? Are there any public comments?
There are no raised hands on Zoom.
Perfect. May I please have a motion to approve item number 22?
I'll move Ibarra.
Motion by Councilmember Ibarra, seconded by Councilmember Davis to find the action exempt under CEQA. Find it in the best interest of the city that the city is served by direct award of a purchase contract to Performance Contracting, Inc. Approve the issuance of a performance contract in the amount not to exceed $313,836 and authorize the city administrator to execute attachment A, amendment to purchase order contract between the city and PCI. I'll call the roll. Mayor Pro Tem Larios.
Yes.
Councilmember Merlo.
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra. Councilmember Davis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And council member, congratulations on your election.
Thank you so much. Now we will go on to oral reports. City Administrator Fandino, do you have any reports?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So city staff is aware of an increase in complaints from neighboring communities regarding the odor concerns that are attributed to the rendering facilities here in Vernon. Such complaints have been made to oversight agencies, the South Coast Air Quality Management District, known as AQMD. While oversight of odor issues is under the jurisdiction of AQMD, given the importance of this issue, the city's health department and city administration staff are in contact with AQMD and are monitoring ongoing developments to establish accountability for their mitigation efforts. Staff is also reviewing the city's municipal code to assess changes that may be necessary to more efficiently mitigate any public nuisance issues that are within the city's jurisdiction, and changes that could limit and prohibit the establishment of such facilities in the city moving forward. Any proposed changes of the municipal code would be brought forth at a council meeting for council's consideration. Additionally, staff is working on developing a community update information webpage on the topic of rendering. The page will predominantly be displayed the contact information for AQMD's online and telephone complaint system, as well as pertinent updates regarding the topic. So I understand that certain council members may be approached in the coming weeks or are being approached now. And so we're taking an all hands approach and looking at this issue to make sure that we can mitigate some of the nuisance smells that we're experiencing. Any questions from city council on that? The Dodger Dreamfield unveiling is on Saturday, April 30th at 10 a.m. The brand new Dodgers Dreamfield baseball field, the softball field, and the training zone will be unveiled at Maywood Park. The city is excited to be part of this monumental project in the heart of Southeast Los Angeles. Council is welcome to attend along with the public. RSVP for city officials must be received by April 25th. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend the event. However, we will have a representative from city administration there. Please advise the city if you wish to attend or are interested or available to attend. Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. This month of April is designated as Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. Vernon Police Department has designated new autism awareness patch for 2022. During the month of April, police department personnel will wear the patch to show support for the worthy cause. Patches are available for sale at $10 to the public and will proceed with all proceeds benefiting a local autism outreach organization. Anyone interested in purchasing a patch can contact Vernon Police Department. The Vernon Public Utilities Department will be starting the MGS outage in May. This will be right around 30 days. Is that right? 26, 27 days. So you'll see some activity over at the plant. They'll be shut down for the 26 or 27 days and then complete all the maintenance and then get the plant back up online. Reminder of upcoming Vernon community events. The next upcoming events are Vernon Cleanup Day on May 7th here at the city. We'll have a designated location where we'll be cleaning and picking up trash. Vernon Business Breakfast will be on May 11th. These events will be posted on the city's website calendar and will be announced via mailers, social media, and Everbridge in the coming weeks. And I think that's it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, City Administrator Fandino. Are there any reports from council?
No, but I do like to say congratulations to the city of Vernon and San Gabriel PD for coming in first place on the Baker to Vegas run.
Congratulations.
Do we have the video of the chief running in at the end?
It's on their social media.
If you don't know, the chief came in and he finished up the leg, and so there's a great video of him coming through the finish line. So way to represent Vernon PD.
I'll make sure to check that out. So with no further business, I adjourn the meeting at 10:35. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending.